So, okay, we're tweeting about which people are responsible for what.
Good
That's
luck
cool.
today, Los Ratunas.
All builds this patch aim to add spell-oriented builds for Irelia, lane Kayn, and Vayne jungle. We historically tried to make lane Nilah work, but it's too hard to balance her capabilities in both bot lane and top lane simultaneously, so we're opting for bot and jungle instead. So first of all, my thoughts here is that like AP Irelia, sure, lane Kayn, sure, Vayne jungle, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me. Why Vayne would be a jungler? I don't think the kit makes sense. I definitely think the game lacks like ADC junglers. I think a good example of that is Kindred, where her kit makes a lot of sense in the jungle because she was designed to be a jungler. But I think the reason why it's so hard to put any ADC in the jungle is because their kit essentially doesn't make sense for it. And I just don't see in what world Vayne jungle makes sense for the game. Like, I'm all for, like, you know, this like fine off meta builds and stuff, but if this becomes like mainstream and Vayne jungle like takes over, I just like don't understand it, but I guess we'll see. I think on PB right now, Vayne jungle has like a 3-minute clear, so the clear is apparently really fast. So yeah. Then for Nilah as well, like I totally get that maybe Riot wants to expand the roles that Nilah could play, but again, I just don't see why a kit that has essentially XP sharing would be anywhere but bot lane. That's why I'm opposed to Nilah being a top laner, mid laner, or a jungler. I just like don't really get it. But at the same time, I don't think Nilah will become a good jungler. I think Vayne has a lot higher chance of succeeding as a jungler than Nilah. So I think Nilah jungle buffs are probably okay, I guess. Gwen, we landed on a set of changes that make it easier for champions that should have better matchups against her to succeed. The slow to tag champions and run them down and being hard to push out in early lane are avenues to hit some of the aspects down. I guess we'll see what they change. Kassadin can be pretty ineffective in the early game, and so that lets him sit at a bit higher than he otherwise would at equivalent power levels, so we're giving him a buff to better live up that fantasy. Morgana, our changes last patch undershot a little bit. Morgana has found it pretty hard to put out pressure in lane, and we think we can go harder in the changes we did last patch. You know, like, Morgana, I think, is just like a very weird champion because you can buff her W a lot, but her W is just like a very inconsistent spell. Because you need somebody to stand still to get like the full value out of it, right? So if her Q doesn't land, then no champion will be staying in her W. Like, you just simply move out of it very quickly. So I'm not really sure how to fix this issue. And I still feel like Morgana passive doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just a weird passive. Master Yi, now that Kraken on hits work on E correctly, he's a bit strong, so we're nerfing it. Okay, that's fine. So we're going for over the changes here. So WAP ratio on Irelia bob by 10 to 30%. That's very big. E cooldown down by 2 seconds later, and I think AP Irelia probably maxes W than E. So this is a level 13 buff. E AP ratio up by 20%, so also a lot of free damage there. Is AP Irelia gonna be good? I still don't think so, honestly. I think that AP Irelia just essentially has too much counterplay because her E is a very dodgeable ability. And so without E, like the thing is like AP Irelia auto-attacks are kind of whatever because they don't scale, and Q is whatever because it doesn't scale with AP that well, right? So AP Irelia will still probably be more of a meme build. And I think these are fine changes. I think like the frustrating part about facing AP Irelia is that she presses W and your wave is gone, right? That's the whole gameplay here. Kassadin Q damage ratio up by 10, E AP ratio up by 5. This is exactly what I said they should do to Kassadin, and I'm glad I kind of predicted these buffs to happen. Yeah. I mean, again, Kassadin is really hard to balance. I still think he's going to be weak, even with these changes. I think he's going to be insanely weak still. But his win rate in solo queue is going to be higher and higher the more buffs they give him. And then essentially he's going to be basically too strong in solo queue while too weak for a player like me, I guess. Kayn, Q mana down by 10, W mana down by 20. So exactly what I also said they're gonna do to Kayn. They are actually decreasing mana cost, which will help lane Kayn more, and jungle Kayn will not really be affected here. Okay, this is fine. Kog'Maw. So Q AP ratio up by 10, W AP ratio up by 1.5 per 100 ability power, and R AP ratio up by 5 and 10% on rank 11 and 16. So yes, these are decent AP Kog'Maw buffs. Q has actually never had 90% AP ratio ever on this champion, so this is the highest it's ever been. It's obviously really strong, right? But then you have to think and consider the fact that Q is dodgeable and Q can be blocked by like minions, right? That's the first thing you need to consider. The second thing is like the W change. Honestly, W1. He's incentivized to buy Nosherstooth, so maybe we'll get a Nosherstooth Kog'Maw build happening here. And I think honestly this is more of a bot lane Kog'Maw buff than mid lane Kog'Maw buff because of his W change. Now the R, sure, you can this is a bit skewed towards mid because you need levels. I have a hard time imagining it's gonna be insanely strong. Maybe it will be, I'm not sure, but I have a hard time imagining that it's gonna be strong because again, I think there's just so many tools that kill Kog'Maw in the game, and I don't think you can really fix that by items that much. AP Kog'Maw is just very killable if you draft engage. Misfortune 2 AD. This I think also works in her Q and R, so obviously pretty big buff, and I'm pretty sure they nerfed 2 AD off her some time ago, so this is just a revert from some time ago. And I think 2 AD is usually a pretty strong buff on a champion like Misfortune. Morgana W minimum 5 seconds damage is going up by 20. And then the mana cost is going down by 20. So the mana cost obviously is a little bit less about jungle morg, a little bit more about like any like bot or support lane morg. But the W minimum damage, I guess it buffs jungle clear and it buffs champion damage early. So maybe some more poke from Morgana support, because like Morgana support had this issue where she didn't even need to skill up W. You would just go 2 points Q, 2 points E at level 4 a lot of times. Nyla Q attack splash damage to monsters up. Yeah, this is gonna like make her clear raptors, wolves primarily a little bit better, but it's probably not enough to make Nyla a good jungler. Senna attack speed per level up. I kind of like this because I think Senna, if you go like the Black Cleaver variant, I think Phantom Dance is probably her second best item. And Q healing is also going up by 20. So a little bit more support to output here instead of just giving her damage and stuff. So these are fine changes. I honestly would expect Riot to give her a little bit of armor back, but sure. Sat E bonus monster damage up by 25 to 250. I still think this is kind of little. And because this ability is only used once every like 12, 14, 15, 16 seconds. I don't know what the cooldown is. I don't think this is that big of a buff for Sat jungle. And I don't think it's going to make a return here. Vayne W monster damage. Basically, I think from my understanding, it's always better early. It's a little bit worse late, but late you already have items, so that doesn't matter. So it's obviously a mega Vayne jungle buff. Okay, sure. Champions. So here we go to the most important part, because honestly, a lot of these buffs are very placebo, and I don't think they're going to have a lot of influence on the game. Champions Gwen, armor down by 3. Okay, our initial slowed down by 30% to 60%. Super happy to see this. R subsequent slow also down, so if you hit multiple R's in a row, it goes to 15% in early, but level 16 the R slow is the same, so her late game is essentially untouched. And attack speed growth also a little bit up. The reason why I really like this is because I think the utility on Gwen R is absolutely disgustingly OP. You have to understand that 60% slow is insanely strong. Like, that's the type of slow where champions just simply cannot move, whether they have insane amounts of MS boost or not. Like, she hits this on you, she will reach you. No matter how fast you are, no matter like what. It's just too big of a slow number. And it should never be the case. Like, I'm pretty sure when Gwen rework happened a long time ago or whatever, I complained that I don't understand why Gwen R slows this much. And I think this is like a really nice way to hit Gwen. So good job. Master Yi. Here it says held down by 15, I think, or 14 or something, and Q on hit ratio down by 10%. Okay. So, sure, probably going to be in similar win rate to before the buff, so this is fine. Rumble. Passive max HP down by 1%. Q damage down by 20 with the same AP ratio. Now, I could be wrong, but I personally think this is a very small nerf to Rumble. The fact that he gained like 3 to 4% win rate last patch, I find this nerf to be insanely small, and I'm really surprised Riot is not hitting Rumble harder here, because the passive max HP damage I don't think is that big of a deal. I think Rumble in trade patterns does not overhit a lot of times anymore, because Riot expanded his hit bar. Then the Q damage, sure, this is like the bigger portion of the nerf, but the AP skill is unaffected, so the longer the game goes, the worse this is. I still think like Rumble is in this weird spot where I think so much of the power in the kit is front-loaded into E. That spell is so OP on Rumble. Because it's the only semi-honest spell that Rumble has. It's the only spell that you can potentially outplay. You can't outplay QWR that much. Or auto-attacks. So I get why it's like that, but yeah. Singed. Poison duration down by 0.2, max damage ticks down by 1. So I think that this is a much bigger nerf to Rumble. And I think that he's probably still gonna be OP. But this is a big damage loss to Singe. So this is not a nerf that should be underestimated. Kind of have a feeling they're gonna have to nerf him again. Team up mushroom opacity down up by 20% to see the mushrooms easier in game. Good change. Then we have to the most interesting part of the changes. I really think the items are by far the most interesting part of the changes. So, Axiom Arc, the lethality item, and Prof and Hydra are both getting buffed, right? Axiom Arc and Prof and Hydra are actually the worst lethality items in the game by far. And I actually checked, they're actually just the worst items in the game, I think. I don't think any other class have items that are as bad as Axiom Arc and Prof and Hydra. Now, speaking of it, when these items get buffed, the next worst item in the game is probably going to be Hubris. But anyway, Axiom Arc will get 250 gold decrease. Yes, some champs might be buying this, probably not first, probably like second, third, fourth. Maybe, definitely. I still think the item is going to be slightly weak, and you're really gonna need to get value out of the passive to justify this item. Now for Prof and Hydra, this buff is... I think the item will still be kind of weak. It will just be very good on its users. Like Quinn will fucking love this item, and it will be OP in Quinn. Like the fact that this item is 2.8k gold, the fact that you get your first item so fast in the game, and you can start powering through the second and third items so much faster is a big deal, and it can't be underestimated in League. Like how important it is for items to be cheap, because the cheaper they are, the faster you get them. And it's the reason why Horizon Focus, before they removed the 10% amp back then, was a really strong second item on mages, but people didn't realize it's because also the cost was very low back then. Anyway, yeah, Prof and Hydra, I think on its really good users is probably going to be overturned, because it's a Hydra item. It's really hard to balance. Quinn is gonna be obviously like the easiest example I can give, where I'm pretty sure Quinn will just be getting a lot of win rate next patch, and I'm pretty sure Rad's gonna have to nerf her. As for Horizon Focus, 50 gold less and 10 more AP. It's fine. I think maybe now we're entering the territory, maybe, where we can justify buying this second item on some champions, maybe. We're really close. Maybe some champions can do it because, well, the second alternatives are not that good. And yeah, you could argue you can just go Creep Bloom instead, but or Bloodladders or Rabadon. Yes, that's the problem with Horizon Focus, is that it's hard to slot it on second item because you always want either Creeped or Overblowed. What is that item called? The fucking AP Black Cleaver. I forgot the name. You want AP Black Cleaver or Creep Bloom, or you want Rabadon. And then on third item, you want AP Black Cleaver or Creep Bloom, or you want Rabadon. And then on fourth item, well, then you can maybe choose Horizon Focus. So Horizon Focus will basically be maybe second items in some scenarios and some champions. And if not, this item might be good on fourth or fifth item. If you count boots, that means fifth or sixth item, I guess. So if the game goes super late, this item actually might be decent to buy. Once you have, let's say I'll just try to demonstrate it so you guys can understand me better. So if you have core mana item, let's say Blackfire Torch, and then you have boots, and then you have Rabadon, let's say, or pen item, and then Rabadon, and then again Rabadon or pen item, and then you have two more slots to finish, right? These two slots, Horizon Focus will be a very good option on a lot of champions that people will not realize. It might, like, it just depends on the champion. It just depends on, like, you have the feats or not, blah, 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 what type of boots you have. A lot of things will depend, how much value you get out of haste and everything. But it might be good. Like, for example, a champ that I buy Horizon Focus very late on is Zilan, because I think it fits really well onto his build on mid lane. Anyway, that's the patch. Did you see W's tweet about Horizon Focus earlier this week? I don't know. No. Isn't 125 AP insane for champs like Xerath and Hui? I think for Xerath, yes, because he has good AP skills. I think for Hui, arguable, because the AP skills are not insane. And he wants AP Black Cleaver usually on second slot. I think for Xerath, Horizon Focus would probably be decent. Yeah. I think on Vel'Koz, it's probably gonna be decent too. Yo, Lamansh TV, thank you for being 50 gifted. Thank you so much. While I was doing the patch preview. Thank you. Okay. Novelist it. What is it? I think the reveal passive on this is actually really underrated, especially when you're playing to retake with a no tank comp. You can fight when the opponent is pinged, swap bushes, and find enemy positions in games where it would normally be impossible. Yeah, this is not wrong. It's very hard to evaluate how strong the reveal is because it's very conditional and it just depends on the game. Some games it will be very useful and some games it won't be. This is true. But this is also true that like a champ like Vel'Koz or Xerath will just use the reveal a lot better, even Lux to an extent, than a champion like Syndra. Because they have higher rangers. And they play this controlled retake via their kits.